Hey, fifth graders, so glad you are here today. We are starting a new unit this week, Unit 7, Westward Expansion. And just keep in mind that when we're talking about westward expansion right now, anyways, we're not necessarily talking about all the way to California. Okay, in Unit 6, we talked about the Northwest Ordinance. Hopefully, you remember talking about that. There were 5 states that were created from that. Indiana is one of them. Okay, so westward expansion is really kind of going to the Mississippi River at this point in time. Okay, so right now the United States was right about to the Appalachian Mountains, and President Jefferson, we're going to read about that in this lesson. You might have already read that in your book. Um, Purchased the Louisiana Territory, which gained a lot of land. Okay, our first lesson is called Early Expansion, Moving West. Now, I'm not going to go through and read all of the text. You should have your books in front of you. I hope that you do have them. Take notes as I'm speaking or go through, underline. I do want you to practice those reading skills on the different pages. Okay, so on the first page, one thing I do want you to think about, so I'm going to ask a question, and then I want you to hit pause because I want you to think about it. And it's in your book, The Think, Pair, Share. The question says, imagine you are alone in the woods or wilderness where you've never been before. How would you find your way around? What would you do to survive? Go ahead and hit pause and think about that. All right, hopefully you took a couple of minutes to either talk to a sibling or talk to your parents, or maybe you just wrote some things down. What would it look like? What would you do if you were out on your own? All right, and the reason that that's the question is that's kind of what people were doing as they were heading out west, just going out into the wilderness, exploring. They had never been there before. They're seeing plants and animals and Native American people that they've never met. And so on this first page, you'll see a vocabulary word, pioneers. When a pioneer is a person who settles a new part of a country. And so pioneers, when they were traveling, they would get on Conestoga wagons and just head out west. As you can see, they don't look very comfortable. Okay, but that's what they would use for their transportation. A well-known pioneer, maybe you've heard of him before, Daniel Boone. He and some men, they created a road through the Appalachian Mountains, and he's kind of known for wearing that coonskin cap. So um, hopefully you've heard of him. If not, really interesting person to look into. All right, so during this time, Thomas Jefferson was president, and he was able to purchase some land from France. And so what he purchased, as I mentioned earlier, was the Louisiana Territory. The Louisiana Territory, France actually had this land, and on the next slide, we're going to see how they got this land. Because if you remember, after the Treaty of Paris, France lost all of their land except for Haiti. They didn't have any land in North America. Okay, so you can see right here just a little bit of information about this purchase, and it was actually pretty cheap. It was $15 million, and yeah, that's a lot of money. But if you look right here at this picture, you can see that all of this land, the Louisiana Territory, all of that for $15 million. So that's a really good deal. Okay, so on the right side, you might want to hit pause and read all of this, but you can see that there was a secret deal between Spain and France, and that is how the French came to get this land. Okay, so once we had this land, Jefferson knew that he needed to discover it. And so he asked Meriwether Lewis to lead an expedition. And an expedition is just a journey. And so this group of men, it was called the Corps of Discovery. The P and the S are silent here. They went out. In your book, it mentions Zebulon Pike. I've got a picture here of Pike's Peak. You can see on the map that on the way west, they all stayed together. And then when they returned, they split up just to be able to explore a little bit more land. There's also a website here you can go. Some of you have used Ducksters before for research. Okay, Sacagawea. So she helps the men. Her husband was the one who was hired, but she was able to help. On the right side, you can see here there's some different pronunciations of her name and spellings. They're all correct. I usually say Sacagawea. The most common is actually Sacagawea. All right, our time is up.